so welcome everybody. It is the October 6th, 2021 meeting of the Finance Committee. We very well might have a few other people filter in, but we'll get going as of now. The plan for tonight, as outlined in the agenda, is obviously first off a welcome, and then some ongoing discussions about both our subcommittee and our various different cluster assignments, as well as the warrant articles. Before we get started, I just want to make sure to lay out the remote meeting procedures that we're currently under, just because of the pandemic and the ongoing allowance of that state of emergency that was voted in. In keeping with that ongoing order from Governor Charlie Breaker to limit gatherings and maximize social distancing, and under legislation passed to address remote board meetings during the emergency declaration, this meeting will be conducted remotely over Zoom. Attendance by board/commission members will be remote, and remote attendance shall count towards quorum. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded on ECAT. So we are all here. We are going to kick off. Just in case I do, some days I forget to do this, some days I don't, but I'm going to make sure that we go through it the right way. Can we do a roll call vote to prove that we have quorum, even though we have human beings floating here? I'm going to go down the normal list that we typically do. When I say your name, you can say your name and present, and then that will officially kick us off. So DiNapoli.
Christina DiNapoli, present.
Mike DiPietro.
Present.
I just spelled your name wrong.
I do it all the time.
I bet. Trying to do this back in napkin alphabetical. Robert
Jenkins, present.
Jay
Olson, present.
Mr. Vamosi.
Timothy Vamosi, present.
And myself, Patrick Helen, is present. All right. With that, we are off and running. So first and foremost, like I said, this is to kick things off. The line item on our agenda is a welcome. And so I figured we would have a little bit of a catch up. I have talked to Jay and to Robert already, just give them a quick lay of the land as to what they've gotten themselves into. And, warnings and large signs of run. No, I'm kidding. But had a quick conversation about what's going on, how this is organized and what we're doing. Figure we can use tonight to talk to some of that, specifically around things like boards, subcommittees, clusters, which are things that are easy to understand, simple to sort of convey. And then we will speak about some of the warrant articles, right? We're going to get through as many of them as we can. Mr. Michael Blanchard is here to help us with that. Thank you very much for attending. We're going to use this time to obviously go through some of the more static ones, the ones that make sense on paper. And then both Wendy and Connor will be here for more of the budgetary large ones that have, a lot of permutations and interesting bits and pieces behind them, so that everybody's on the same page. And then typically we have the opportunity for, Kelly came, let me promote her. We have the opportunity for both our own committee member comments, meaning do we have subcommittees that we're a part of? Do we have anything to share from those subcommittee meetings if they've happened? And then if there are community members that want to speak, they can raise their hands at that point, and we can promote them and allow them to have some level of communication. So with that, let me see. First and foremost, like I said, welcome everybody. Congrats to both Jay and Robert for jumping in. I think you guys are going to have a great time. Hey, Kelly. The thing I wanted to convey tonight, just to make sure you guys are on the same page as us, is that essentially, as I said the other night, when we talked, each of us talked individually, the idea behind this is we are effectively part of that financial watchdog stance of the town, right? We are going to be in the position as a recommendation, or as an advisory body to either recommend or not recommend different warrant articles that are put before us. We have obviously lengthy conversations with the various different department heads and the departments themselves. And we actually have also subcommittees and various different clusters that we are associated with, so that we have a little bit of a limited scope. So we're not sort of overtaxing ourselves and saying, all right, there's 9 of us, we all have to call the DPW, we all have to call the school board, we all have to call all these various different people to understand where the budget is. It's not our charter. Part of our charter is obviously this scenario where we're investigating, asking questions, and essentially the way I look at it is we're delineating and showing the town some of the things that they might not have the opportunity or the ability to jump in and ask the question on. We're that stand-in for them, and then we obviously vote on it based on that understanding. So with that, the first thing I want to call out is that we do have, just so you guys are aware, we do have some subcommittees. Currently, they are all filled. This is actually unique in that when we lost a few people before, when we had the 3 members before step down, we went through a process and refilled those subcommittees. So until the next reorganization moment, until the next election, effectively those people are going to be sitting in there. So there's no current openings in any of the subcommittees, but I wanted to give Jay and Robert an understanding of what they are. And that we, as finance committee members, we assign different members to have an interest in a few of these different subcommittees. And so as of right now, and guys, keep me honest, if I'm saying this wrong, or someone did not sign up for one of these, let me know. As of right now, for capital planning, it's Christina DiNapoli. For the budget subcommittee, it's Shireen Diaz and Michael DePietro. And for audit subcommittee, it's Kelly Lamb. So there are individual meetings very much like this one, right? Where audit subcommittee and a variety of others will meet. Oh, sorry, one more. There is the school planning committee as well, which is an appointed committee. That's Tim Vamosi and myself are on that one. There's not a lot of planning going on because they're in the process of building the school. So, but hey, we're there to give moral support still. So this opportunity will come back up and around, right? As we get to the next election cycle, those of you that are going to continue on with the board, or those that are running for re-election, all of that opportunity then becomes, we do a reorganization and we say, all right, who wants to be part of the capital planning? People raise their hands, and we as a body vote on those people. So just keep that in mind. All of the meetings for capital planning, budget, audit, all the same rules and regulations that like ours are there. So if you have any interest, or if you want to look into those, they are available on ECAT. You can look into those as well. You can always attend one when it was non-pandemic. But just keep that back in napkin, have that in mind. If that comes up, or if there's any questions on that, we can definitely dive into it. The second piece is what we call the departmental assignments. And so I have, let me see. So currently the way we do this, and I don't know how far this goes back. This is before me. But essentially the idea was that with the just large number of different departments, right? You have things like DPW, you have fire and ambulance, you have the schools, you have police, all the different departments that are within the town. In order for the finance committee to have a good understanding of any potential issues, any systematic issues that they might have, what budget concerns or line items are causing problems year after year, we said, let's split this up. Instead of, like I said before, instead of me and you and everyone else on this call having to call the DPW and have the same conversation with poor Dave 16 times, instead we say, okay, who's the assigned person that has a couple of these different departments, so that they're essentially the liaison for the finance committee for those different departments. When I first got elected to the board, the chair and co-chair at that time said, you know what if we went one step further? What if we were a little bit more proactive instead of reactive? What if we made a concerted effort to reach out to them? So at some point during the budget cycle, Connor will give us the high sign. Connor will be like, hey guys, you can reach out now. It's cool. We've done enough preliminary budget alignment and understanding. Now the finance committee can go and talk to these various different departments about the upcoming budget. And at that point, you have your list, right? So for instance, mine is the coolest one because it has the library, and talking to Uma is awesome. Mine is library and planning. Right. So when it's my turn to reach out, when Connor says, hey, go for it, I call Uma. We forget to talk about the budget for 45 minutes, and then we talk about it. And it's relatively straightforward. And she makes me take home a telescope, and it's like every time, right? It's like that kind of scenario. I can't promise that's going to be the same experience.
How many telescopes do you have now?
It's the same one. I have to keep bringing, it's a library.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Bring things back to the library. I don't know if you're aware of what libraries do. If you have DPW and Dave gives you a truck, fantastic. I'm not going to say anything about it, but you get the point. So for that, right now, the cluster alignment that we do have 3 openings, which is cluster 1, cluster 2, and cluster 3. And so everybody else is assigned, I think, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So the clusters are broken up into, like I said, a couple different departments. And so we do not have to do this tonight. Not all 3 of the new appointees are here. I'm just going to let you guys know. So if you have any interest or any preferences, you can have that back of mind, so that we'll take care of this probably on the next meeting if we're all here. so we can make sure to assign people to the clusters that they want to be assigned to. And I'll just read these off, and I will send you a document that has this in it so you guys can see it after the fact, which is cluster 1 is a relatively small amount of department budgets in that it's several small ones. So it's all combined, which is selectmen, finance committee, the reserve fund, town council, and town clerk. So big collection for that one. There's 5 of them. Cluster 2 is the accountant, collector, treasurer, and the assessors department. And then cluster 3 is a pretty big one. It's police, dispatch, fire, and ambulance. All the other ones are currently, like I said, claimed. We do oftentimes have people raise their hands to swap if they want to at that reorganization point, but we'll do that on the next meeting. Just keep that back in mind when we do meet on the 13th, 14th, whatever. So that's it from at least from a preamble, right? From a welcome and come to the party moment. Like I said, there's no subcommittees that currently have openings. The clusters will take care of next week. So the next step is to dive into this warrant article. And so just to reiterate what I said last night, this is obviously the main aim of what we do here. And Michael, you're gonna be on charge of keeping me honest as to which ones we should probably do. But essentially, warrant articles, these are the items that the town will be voting on at special town meeting. We are going to give our own recommendation based on our deliberation and discussion tonight on the ones that we bring up. The reason why, and I sort of teased this to everybody earlier, the reason why we're doing it in this sort of fast-paced association, we're doing one tonight and one next week, is because when you go to town meeting, you get a packet. That packet has a printout of all the different warrant articles in the final stage with what the recommendation and the vote was from both the select board and the finance committee. So if we don't have everything buttoned up and our recommendations captured by this time next week, then that doesn't have enough time to go to press. So essentially, there's no rule or regulation that we can't continue to deliberate and have another meeting and vote on these things. It's just from a benefit standpoint, we want to have as much information in front of the average person in the town when they walk into that meeting. There have been times that we just can't get to everything. If we have a really, really, really heavy list, I mean, we've had times we've had 20, 25 of these at once. We have a big list. Sometimes we save some in the night of town meeting. We will vote on the final few, right? The benefit of that is that when people come in, they always ask in the context of town meeting, what did the finance committee vote on and what did the select board vote? And so we have the ability to share that with the town, but it's nice to have it printed. So that's where we are with that. So all of that blabbing and me talking to get down to business here of these warrant articles. So I ran through these and I figured some of them are probably best for, we can at least, both from an educational standpoint and having the ability to ask mostly Wendy, who our town accountant, a lot of the details about some of these different budgetary measures and how these things are transferred. There's quite a few of them that are going to be better served for that. There's some that, as you can see, are placeholders still, right? So like, for instance, Article 1, we're transferring something to the stabilization fund, so it will be something. So those ones are obviously going to skip tonight because we don't have final numbers. Those will get buttoned up as we get closer. But some of them, we do have a lot of detail and a lot of information on. And so I figured some of these we can just go through. Michael, did you have any idea or suggestion on which ones you thought were appropriate for this meeting? My thought was, I thought 3 and 4 make sense tonight. 5 is a pretty standard one, which almost always is just sort of a placeholder. 6, I don't think we can do yet. Or 6, maybe we can. 7's not there yet. 8, 9, maybe. 10 seems like a simple one. 11 seemed like a simple one. Do you have any sort of opinion on which ones we should try to drive through right now?
I agree. I think I think you should hold on at least 1, 6, 7, and 9, because those are all ones that we're still waiting more information on. 5, there's actually no bills currently that need to be paid, so there's no recommendation needed at this time. So We don't anticipate any, but we leave it there as a placeholder in case something comes up. So I think if the committee's willing, I think 2, 3, 4, 8, 10, 11, 12 are all possible for tonight. I'm happy to talk to those, and if you're comfortable, voting.
Yeah. That's perfect for me then. So what we will do, and guys, I will eventually stop talking and pause to see if you have any questions, I promise. But I'm going to read through a relatively quick version of these. Obviously, these are publicly posted. These are publicly available. We don't have to read these out in its full necessity for the audience, although sometimes I do it to make Mike cross-eye. But things like the actual explanation and the summary, I'll give a relatively high-level scenario on it, and then we will ask for a vote. For those of you that are familiar with the standard sort of like Robert rules and parliamentary voting procedures, it'll make sense in 5 seconds. But with that, so Michael, 2, 3, 4, 8, 10, 11, 12 are the ones that you're thinking?
Yes.
Okay. Let's get into it then. So Article 2, transfer to the Capital Stabilization Fund to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or appropriate by transfer from available funds a sum of money to be placed in the Capital Stabilization Fund or take any other action thereto. Explanation, this article moves a sum of available free cash or other available revenues to the Capital Stabilization Fund, et cetera, et cetera. The anticipated transfer is $117,283, and once transferred, the balance of the Capital Stabilization Fund will be $1,883,504. Michael, do you have any comments or information on that you'd like to share?
Yeah, so just generally as the committee probably knows, so we have a general stabilization fund, which is number 1, which we're going to hold off on. Capital stabilization fund, which is this article. We also have a sewer stabilization fund. And those are basically savings accounts for a town that town meeting can appropriate money from. The capital stabilization fund is intended to have funding separate for capital purchases and things of that nature. So this article would transfer $117,283 into that fund. And this is actually a Medicare reimbursement relating to ambulance service. So the idea here is to put the money away in capital stabilization because we have a new ambulance which is going to be coming up in our capital plan. So to kind of place that here and then utilize that funding for an ambulance when that is due in the capital plan. So if we do that, that will put the fund at about $1.88 million. So the select board voted to include and recommend that article. And if the finance committee is willing, we'd seek your recommendation as well.
Would that be something that has to go back to town meeting to then move that appropriation back out of there? Or is it just part of the general capital planning for?
So that would have to be appropriated from town meeting. Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions?
Mike, would you mind just mentioning the definition of free cash for the new members in the public?
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, sure. So each year, we budget a certain amount of money to departments. And at the end of the year, we look at our revenues and expenses, and sometimes we have money left over. So it could be that revenues came in higher than we budgeted for. It also could be expenses were not what we expected. So departments basically turn back money at the end of the year. So there's a process that the town goes through, and the state is actually involved to certify that, and then that's available for the following fiscal year to be appropriated by town meeting. So just for an example, back to number 1, which I'll talk about next week, the money for that stabilization fund comes from free cash. So the reason that number is not there yet is free cash hasn't been certified, and so therefore they're still blank, and that'll move forward once we have a formal number back from the state.
Thanks, Michael. Good call, Tim. Thank you for that. Does anyone else have any other questions?
Am I going to anything obligate this to be spent on the ambulance?
No. So I don't think we have the ability to do that. So the capital stabilization funds for all capital, but that would be the intention, and we would share that here at town meeting. And then
That's my understanding. Do we anticipate anybody having an objection or a problem with taking it out of a stabilization fund per se, rather than some other fund when it comes to that?
I hope is not. Again, as we're being upfront, we're taking this money now. It's money from ambulance service, so we're kind of parking it here to hold it until that ambulance is needed, and then to take it back out of there.
So so mechanically, we're just increasing the stabilization fund, but from an intent purpose, stabilization fund is just the account of choice to park the money.
Right, it's the appropriate account, it's a capital savings account, so it'd be the appropriate account to park it in, right?
Cool. Move to recommend Article 2 or whatever, 2, yeah, Article 2.
Nice. Thank you, sir. Can I get a second on that motion to
Second.
recommend? Who was that? Was that
Christina.
All right. So that's it, guys. This is the whole gig. Somebody says motion to recommend or chooses not to. Somebody seconds it, and then I do the exact same thing when we kicked off and go down the list. So I'm just going to run through them. Kelly, I'm unfortunately, because I am a Luddite and I wrote your name down at the bottom because you came in as the last, then you're coming after me. So I apologize ahead of time. DiNapoli.
Christina DiNapoli, yes.
Mike DePietro.
DePietro, yes.
Mr. Jenkins.
Robert Jenkins, yes.
First vote. Look at that. See that? Jay Olson.
Jay Olson, yes.
We get 2 in a row. Look at these guys. Mr. Vimosi.
Timothy Vimosi, yes.
I am a yes. And Kelly.
Lamb, yes.
Nice. Thank you. So Article 2 is a recommendation. All right, let's move on to Article 3. Transfer to Special Education Reserve Fund. To see if the town will vote to appropriate by transfer from available funds the sum of $200,000 to be placed in the Special Education Reserve Fund established pursuant to Chapter 40, Section 115E, et cetera, et cetera. Explanation: the Special Education Reserve Fund was established to set aside funds for future unanticipated or unbudgeted costs related to special education costs. The requested appropriation will replenish funds previously transferred out of the reserve fund at the June 22nd, 2020 annual town meeting. The select board did recommend. This just one small, before I kick it over to you, Michael, one thing that has come up in the recent times, for those of us that have been sort of down this pathway on the board before, there have been some unanticipated expenses that have come out due to both state mandates, which maybe not as unanticipated, or also changes in obviously like the various different amount of assistance we get from the state and where those different gaps are. So this is something that was set aside specifically to help mitigate any of those fluctuations. Michael, if you have anything else to add on that, I'll pass it over to you.
I think you covered it. You know, between the explanation, we're basically putting money back that was used to balance the budget. You know, this came out in June of the June 2020 annual town meeting, so kind of in the worst of the pandemic. There will be sufficient free cash to replenish this. You know, and as Patrick said, it's money that you know, is used by the school committee under state law to offset unplanned special education costs. And that can occur for a variety of reasons, as Patrick mentioned. You know, a common one is often a family moves to town, you know, we're not aware of, and the child has certain needs, might require out-of-district services and costs that we're legally responsible for, of course, but just weren't considered in the budget. So it serves really as kind of a pressure relief valve on the school budget. So we just look to put that money back and seek your recommendation.
That's a great example. When we do get to town meeting, superintendent will usually have a very, very exhaustive example of what her budget association is and what these different things are. And there's a very good point about special education there that you guys will see. So with that, I am looking for a motion to recommend Article 3.
Motion to recommend Article 3.
Can I get a second?
Second.
My usual suspects here. Look at you two. All right, so DiNapoli.
DiNapoli, yes.
DePietro.
Petro, yes.
Jenkins.
Jenkins, yes.
Olson.
Olson, yes.
Vimosi.
Timothy Vimosi, yes.
Patrick Helen is a yes, and Kelly Lamb.
Lamb is a yes.
Thank you. Article 3 is recommended. All right, Article 4. Establishment of special injury leave, injured on duty reserve fund. To see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of the 4th paragraph of MGL Chapter 41, section, I think, is that section symbol? I always get this wrong and I sort of just stumble through it. Section, we're going to go with the town administrator. 111F, and establish a special injury leave indemnity fund and to appropriate by transfer from available funds a sum of money to fund said fund or take any other action relative thereto. Explanation. The town self-insures for injured on-duty medical coverage. However, payroll costs associated with long-term injury absences for police and firefighters are typically borne out of existing payroll budgets for those departments. The amount of overtime necessitated for shift coverage resulting from an injury in the line of duty varies widely and is not an expense that can be reasonably anticipated and budgeted for during the routine budget cycle. And so the special reserve fund would provide flexibility for those departments. Select board has recommended it. This one seems pretty self-explanatory, Michael, but if you have any other additional info on it, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to go quick, but just for the benefit of the committee. So Article 4 is mechanically very similar to Article 3. Both of these funds are similar to the Finance Committee Reserve Fund, which is a smaller relief valve that the committee has the ability to disperse funds, which is, a lot more flexible than having to go back and calling a special town meeting. So this is a new article. This fund has not existed before. It would be a new fund under the state's injured on duty statute, which is, Patrick outlines 111F. And basically the way IOD coverage currently works, if you're a police or a firefighter in a civil service department, which Easton is, and you're injured in line of duty, you're not eligible for workers' comp, which most other folks are. You're eligible for insurance duty benefits, which include payments from your employer, as well as indemnification from related medical costs. So, we already have kind of a catastrophic indemnity plan for medical and small reserves in our benefits budget to take care of those things, which, thankfully are not very common. But there are other costs associated with injury on duty when you have a long-term injury. And, obviously we don't anticipate it, so there's no way to plan for it. In addition to paying the costs for the employee who's, hopefully home and recovering, most of the time, particularly departments that are thin staffed, like public safety often is, you have to backfill that vacancy and it's on overtime. So it's very difficult for the chiefs or the town to budget within those departments for that. So this would establish a fund, create a reserve fund that the select board would have disbursement authority over. And we're proposing $100,000 from available free cash to start this fund off. So it's we look at it as kind of a fiscal sustainability tool. We've been building our reserves and trust funds, and this is another tool that would provide some relief to the police and fire departments.
Hey, Michael,
Yes.
this establishes the fund. Is there a separate article to fund it?
So the explanation would be.
There's no dollars on it.
Yeah, that's a good question. So this establishes a fund, and I believe the actual funding might be in the budget article.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It was exactly my question, Mike. I was like, I don't see a dollar in here.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So this is establishment then, and then whatever the funding would be a separate item for.
Correct, but we are proposing that it will be $100,000.
Okay. Okay. Great question, Mike. Thank you, Michael.
I'm going to motion to recommend.
Wait, hold on, Speedy. Hold on. Does anyone else have any other questions before we table this? Seeing none. Mike, were you saying something? I could have sworn I heard you.
I actually was going to say to Robert and Jay, you got to learn to interrupt me. I'm not patient. So you're not rude if you just say, hold up there, Mike, you're out of control. So motion to Peter, motion to recommend Article 4.
Can I get a second?
DiNapoli, second.
All right. DiNapoli.
DiNapoli, yes.
DePietro.
Peter, yes.
Jenkins.
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Bamosi.
Mostly respectfully abstain.
Thank you. And I am a yes. And Lamb.
Yes.
Now, I couldn't possibly have planned this better. So obviously Tim is abstaining. That is an option for you. It's not just an absolute yes or no. If there is something in there that is either ethically or associated with existing known entities that you're part of, then yes, obviously you can abstain. Tim being one of the premier members of our department. Look at him laughing like he's not. He knows he is. It has abstained from that because obviously this could be potentially impactful to him. We hope not. We hope not across the board.
Not going
All right. Let's see. So we're gonna skip 5 because it doesn't exist yet. But 5, just so everyone knows, if there are bills that have somehow slipped through the cracks, which almost never happens because Wendy's amazing. But if something were to either get deferred and then pop up later or whatever it might be, something was a glitch in the matrix and it comes back up, at that point, we have this one line item that is, as Michael said, it's sitting there waiting for that moment so we can make sure to pay that off. If it's not necessary, we just essentially eliminate it. Someone at town meeting will stand up and say, this is not necessary, let's move right on. And then we just jump forward. 6, we're going to skip. Oh, sorry, was there a question on that? Somebody said no. 6, we're going to skip because that is the actual amending, which we don't need yet because it's not there. And 7, the same. So we're on to 8. Article 8, fund sick and vacation buyback as required by collective bargaining agreement. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or appropriate by transfer from available funds a sum of money to pay the cost of accumulated vacation and sick leave required to be paid by collective bargaining contract or take any other action relative thereto. Explanation: the fire department has a retirement forthcoming for an employee eligible for vacation and grandfathered into previous but no longer existing sick leave buyback upon retirement. This article would fund those obligations. The select board has recommended. Michael, do you have anything to add to that one?
Yeah, so this is a relatively routine article. These only come up from time to time. For various unions, we have bargaining agreements that stipulate buyout provisions upon separation of service, such as retirement. This article would be for $17,000, which is for sick and vacation buyback. Sick leave buyback is a practice that used to be commonplace in a lot of state and local contracts, but it's really been phased out. So it's becoming more and more, although it's routine, it's more and more rare that these articles come forward as the workforce turns over. And most employees hired after the 90s and 2000s generally are not eligible for sick leave buyback. Basically the towns work to get that out of contracts because it creates a real big financial liability for communities. But obviously we honor the contracts we made with employees at the time of their hire, and that's what this is for. So again, the select board recommended it, and we'd ask for the finance committee to consider that as well.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any questions on this one?
Michael, you did mention that this is $17,000.
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Future motion to recommend Article 8.
Waiting for it.
Second.
Oh, he jumped you. See that?
Beat me.
He knows what he's
I have to be
doing.
more aggressive.
All right. All right, let's go down the list again for Article 8. DiNapoli,
DiNapoli, yes.
Petro,
Peter, yes.
Jenkins,
Jenkins, yes.
Olson,
Olson, yes.
Bamosi,
Vamosi, yes.
Patrick Helen is a yes, and Kelly Lamb.
Lamb is a yes.
Thank you all. All right, I believe we're skipping 9.
Yeah, we'll skip 9, just as the select board had requested some more information on this. They did vote to include it,
Okay.
but they've not taken a vote to recommend yet. Just really briefly, in the will of late Oliver Ames Jr., there was a fund set up to provide assistance to Easton for highway and education. And that fund has trustees who are responsible for it. And the trustees are actually appointed by town meeting. So we have there's a current trustee who's resigned. And then they're also looking to add one additional slot as well. So the select board, as I said, included it, but they want a little information on a little more information on what the trust does and a little background information on the proposed trustees. And so we'll be going back to the select board with that. They're not meeting until after the 13th, your next meeting, but hopefully when Connor and Wendy come next week, they may have some of that information and can talk a little more in depth about it to you.
So this could very well be, just for everybody else, this could very well be one of those ones that if we don't have information or if we don't have a comfort level of taking a vote on it, then what I would do is the night of town meeting, if town meeting's at 7 o'clock, we would have like a 6:30 meeting. It would be a quick, just enough people to have quorum, and we would probably take up this one, for instance, if we had additional information at that time. Sometimes someone that has that additional information will attend, just to give a quick snapshot, we speak about it, and then, like I said, we would then have the ability to go in and say, yes, we met earlier tonight and we voted on this, it is not in the packet, for instance. Okay. So then we are on to 10. Rescind previously authorized debt. To see if the town will vote to rescind $230,000 of the borrowing authorized under Article 17 of the May 18th, 2015 annual town meeting. said borrowing having been authorized for the purpose of replacing well number 4, of which the remaining authorization is no longer needed as the project is complete, or take any other action relative thereto. This housekeeping article will remove the remaining authorization that would otherwise remain on the books indefinitely. Essentially, Michael, I'll take this one. Essentially, it's we voted to authorize a certain amount of borrowing. We used a certain amount of that borrowing. What's left, or the actual authorization of that full amount of borrowing, is still there until we go through the process of housekeeping and removing it after the fact. So since the well's there, it's been replaced. This is no longer needed. This is cleaning it up. How'd I do?
Perfect.
4 years, man. I finally got one. All right. With that, are there any other questions?
Motion to recommend Article 10.
Or Michael recommends it. Are there any other questions?
No, nobody ever could. You can't question these. These are silly.
Snappy. Snappy. All right, so we get a motion to recommend on the table. Do I have a second?
Second,
Second.
DiNapoli.
Ah, she beat you. You got there. All right, DiNapoli.
Oh, DiNapoli, yes, sorry.
Okay, DePietro.
Petro, yes.
Jenkins.
Jenkins, yes.
Olson.
Olson, yes.
Vamosi.
Famosi, yes.
I am a yes. And Lamb.
Lamb, yes.
All right, that's 10. 11 is, I didn't read 11 and 12 yet. 11 is easement for National Grid installation. Oh, I did read this, never mind. Of underground electrical utilities for the Blanche A. Ames Elementary School on Spinner Street. To see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to grant an easement for the installation of underground electrical utilities in a property known and numbered as 50 Spooner Street, or take any other action relative thereto. This easement has been requested by National Grid for the installation of underground electrical service to the future Blanche A. Ames Elementary School, which is currently under construction. The property in question is town-owned, and the easement is necessary to provide utilities to the building. A plan depicting the easement is on file with the Select Board's office. The Select Board has recommended. This is right by the road, right, Michael?
Yeah, it's on town property.
Yeah.
And there is a proposed layout. It is subject to change. I think this basically gives the select board the authority to work with DPW and Dave Field to kind of get out the nitty gritty specifics. But essentially it's an easement because, it's needed to connect electricity to the building.
Right.
So it's
Awesome.
pretty straightforward.
Any questions on this one before Mike starts talking?
Does it have a cost or budget associated with it, or is it just an easement?
Just an easement.
It's actually not the easement from what I read. It's the authorization to the select board to grant the easement.
Thank you. True.
And Michael, is DPW involved in the site plan or the location?
Yes, very, very much so. Yep, DPW are, and also the construction team on site, the architects, they're all working together on this. Absolutely.
Motion to recommend Article 11.
If there are no other questions.
If there are no other.
So motion to recommend, I have a motion to recommend on the table.
Second.
Did Jay just second it? Did Jay try to second it?
I think so.
I think he did.
No, I'm not ready for that yet.
Oh, it's too early. All right.
Of course you are, Jay. You're
I
ready.
heard something in the background. I wasn't sure if you were going for it, but we got one from Robert. So I'll go down the list again. So DiNapoli,
DiNapoli, yes.
Petro,
Petro, yes.
Jenkins,
Jenkins, yes.
Olson,
Olson, yes.
Vamosi,
Famosi, yes.
Helen is a yes, and Lamb.
Lamb, yes.
Excellent. And then we've got Article 12, to see if the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $1 million for the purpose of financing the following water pollution facility projects, i.e. repair, replacement, and or upgrade of septic systems pursuant to agreements with Board of Health and residential property owners, including without limitation all costs thereof as defined in Section 1 of Chapter 29C of General Laws. To determine whether this appropriation should be raised by borrowing from the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust or otherwise. The explanation is, if approved, this will allow the town to avail itself of additional funds available through the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust at low interest, which will then be used to provide loans to residents for the express purpose of upgrading failed septic systems, which are no longer protecting public health. Upgrading includes a variety of things like replacement or connecting to a sewer. Funds are offered as betterment loans, which will be paid back with interest over a period of time not to exceed 20 years. They appear as additional charges on the real estate tax bill. This has been around for a while. As you can see, it's been accepting applications for the program since January of 2012. There's been $3.4 million in loans sent out to date with more than 140 system upgrades. This approval allows for the additional continuation of the program. Questions, thoughts, anything? This one seems really.
It seems clear to recommend it, but I'm just making sure I understand it. It's the way it reads is it appropriates the money. Oh, I missed the word financing. That's why I didn't understand it. Sorry.
Yeah,
Purpose
Michael,
of
if I'm
finance.
correct, and I think I'm correct because I remember this has come up before, but essentially it's we get the funds, or we're the obtainer of said funds, and then provide the low interest opportunity for those funds to individuals in the town, which are then paid back through that property tax line item.
That's right. And then one of the questions that also comes up is, what's the risk to the town? And the answer is it's quite minimal because the loans are treated as betterments and have a property attached to them. So if somebody were not to pay, things are settled either at the time of sale or foreclosure.
Right.
So the risk is pretty minimal. And it's obviously a great benefit given the numbers to the community.
There was a separate program that was the sewer betterment for the various different sewer projects, right? This was not.
So this should not be confused with that, right?
Yeah.
The names unfortunately are the same, but the sewer betterments are different in that that was a town program and is part of those specific projects. This is something where people actually come and apply for willingly and are able to upgrade their septic system, and/or even if they have paid a sewage betterment, they could also use this fund to connect into that. Because there's a cost associated with abandoning your septic system and then connecting into the town sewage.
Got it. Thank you.
I just have a question. When you say people have to come in and apply, what is the application process? Is there a possibility somebody can get denied?
I don't know if anyone ever has. So the Board of Health administers this, and I'm sorry that I don't have that level of detail on it. It's a pretty straightforward application process. I believe it's all state forms that we use. So it's pretty consistent in any community that participates. There's nothing, we don't have any sort of special requirements in Easton. But I think it's just, there is some demonstration of your ability to pay it back. But I couldn't tell you exactly what those requirements are. I'm certainly happy to try to pull a copy of the application. I can get that to the committee.
Does the town make any money off the interest of this loan?
I believe it's just kind of like a pass through. I don't believe we actually, I'm just trying to look really quick. I'm sorry, I don't have that at my fingertips, but I believe ultimately it is essentially a pass through. We're able to get that financing through the state and we pass it on to the residents at kind of a subsidized interest rate.
Yeah, I think it's because it's a public health concern as opposed to it being it's not a vanity project. It's it's a public health concern when things are happening, and obviously in some cases we have septic systems that fail without the opportunity for someone to then take care of that with their own funding.
So just to be clear on what we're doing here, this is this article will both appropriate the $1 million and will authorize the borrowing of the $1 million, or have we already borrowed it from the Clean Water Trust?
This would appropriate an additional $1 million in borrowing from the trust.
We already have a trust set. This is already an existing program. This is us authorizing additional. So the ongoing trust appropriation is there, correct, Michael?
Ask the question again. I'm sorry, I'm not.
Essentially, this is not a new program. This is an existing program.
No, this is ongoing. As the funding that we're allocated is basically used up, the Board of Health comes back to ask for additional funding.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I understand that. What I meant was, I know it's been around. It's not really a question of whether to recommend it. I'm just making sure I understand the mechanics of it. That obviously from the top, this involves appropriating it, but I don't know the mechanics of the Clean Water Trust. Have we already approved borrowing from the Clean Water Trust, or does this article also approve the entering into a loan from the of an additional $1 million from the Clean Water Trust?
Yes.
Is it purely appropriation or is it ways and means as well?
It's an appropriation that is raised by borrowing from the Clean Water Trust.
Okay. And I assume the $1 million is just a round number to continue funding it rather than actually, okay. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, right.
Okay.
Luckily, the 15 failed septic systems in town all came out amazingly to $1 million even.
Isn't it? It's incredible how that works.
Stunning
Isn't
how
it?
that happened. The fix is in somewhere, right? Some septic system company is like, I got these guys.
I'm going to recommend Article 12 to Petra.
There you go.
Second to Napoli.
I'll shut up. It's fine. DiNapoli.
To Napoli, yes.
Petra,
Petra.
yes.
Jenkins.
You're on mute.
Jenkins, yes, sorry.
Olson. Somebody does it every meeting. Don't worry about it.
Olson, yes.
Jay has to like *6 to get himself off mute, which is why there's a pause there every time. Vamosi.
Vamosi, yes.
Helen is a yes, and Lamb.
Lamb, yes.
Excellent. So with that, we are done with the ones that we're going to be doing tonight. That is the articles. Michael, I appreciate your help tonight. You did a great job. Nailed it. Ran right through it all. Stunning. You can jump if you'd like. We'll let you go so you don't have to continue to stare at us. And then we're just going to wrap up with a couple different comments, and we will see you around and about at town meeting probably.
Perfect. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you,
Have a good
Michael.
night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right. So with that, that's it, right? So that's the warrant article process. Relatively straightforward. We don't always vote yes on everything, shockingly enough, but a lot of times, especially the one-off town meeting that happens in the November timeframe, these are usually more fundamental basics as opposed to structural changes or really interesting things that are happening. Like, like we had marijuana legislation a few years back that was a bit of a hot point of discussion and engagement. These aren't those, right? Like whether or not we fund an existing program with another $1 million to help people when their septic systems fail. Relatively non-controversial discussion, but also I think that kudos to the town administration that they bring a lot of sensible things to this stage. So usually when we get to these points, deliberation and discussion is more, as Michael was saying, we're looking at the nuts and bolts of things as opposed to whether or not it should exist. But that's my opinion. We will, I'm sure, get into the mix of things as we go along. With that, so that has called out where we stand currently for warrant articles. The rest of them, like I said, we will vote on. I have a list of the ones we have not yet done. We will take up on the next meeting. The last piece then is any committee updates for subcommittees or community member comments. I don't believe anyone is on that's not one of ours. Joe from ECAT is on, and Stacy, who's taking our minutes. Is there anybody have any mentions or updates from the various different subcommittees they're on that they'd like to share? Seeing none. Are there any comments, just general comments about FinCom, life in general, that you'd like to share before we wrap up for the evening?
Just again, for the sake of the new guys, I tend to be lighthearted and joke about a lot of this and rush through it. Seriously, we actually do take the deliberation seriously. Just these November ones, and frankly, 3/4 of the other ones are usually just boom, boom, boom. It's there's no question about them.
Sure.
That apology aside, on that note, motion to adjourn.
Well, I was going to let the new people do that, Michael, but thanks for ruining my awesome moment.
That's what I'm here to ruin your evening.
So the last order of business in front of us is that we do also, obviously, like we had a roll call vote to join, we do have a motion to adjourn. So
I withdraw my motion to adjourn. There we
Okay.
go. Robert
Michael
Nates.
withdraws his. I have a
Well,
motion to adjourn.
I'll have to make the motion to adjourn.
Jay,
Peter,
can I get a second? No.
I will second it.
We got him in. Okay,
Olson,
here
second.
we go. DiNapoli,
Napoli, yes.
Peter, yes.
Jenkins,
Jenkins, yes.
Olson,
Olson, yes.
Vamosi.
Vamosi, yes, and I look forward to the minutes on that.
Poor Stacy's like, wait, who seconded that? I am a yes, and Lamb.
Lamb, yes.
All right, guys, we are done. You are back to your evening. Thank you so much. We will
Thank you,
see you
guys.
next week. Have a
Good
great night.
night.
Take care.
Very
everybody.
enjoyable.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
You too.